Hi, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of In the Spotlight series, where we shine a light on entrepreneurs, SMEs, and innovators. I'm Maxine Crow, your host, by the way, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined again by Jasper Steinhausen from Business with Impact. Now, the last time, Jasper, we were on, we were doing an FAQ around for sustainability for leaders. However, I really wanted to get you back on the show because since that time, you have launched your book, Making Sustainability Profitable. So we'll talk about that. But audience, welcome to Jasper. Jasper, how are you?
Hi, and thank you so much. It's really good to be back. I've been looking forward to this conversation. So very pleased to be here.
That's absolutely amazing. So as ever, I do have some questions for you, and also really want you to talk about the messaging in your book as well, and as well around business with impact. But first of all, just for the audience, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career, Jasper.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm the founder of the company Business with Impact. So I'm a business consultant, and my specialty is to make sustainability profitable. And I've been working with this field and in this specialty basically for at least the last 15 years. Basically, spent all my life in the area of sustainability, but especially over the last 15 years, been focusing in on how do we really utilize this tool, the tool of sustainability, circular economy, whatever it is you choose to call it, or what angle you come from. But how do we use that in ways that both create imminent value to the company that is doing the changes at the same time as improving the planet we are living on. So that's what I've been doing, and also been presenting a lot on this subject because there's a lot of people that are curious to how do you connect this, because in the average business person's mind, it's kind of like, well, there's business and then there's sustainability, and they don't really go hand in hand. So when I claim they do, that quite often have people sort of raise, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So I think I've been presenting to well beyond 10,000 people on this, and then, as you said, recently I published this little fellow here, making sustainability
Give you a round of
profitable.
applause.
And really pleased to see that it hit the best-selling status and number one in several regions across the world. So that's also really interesting, and already picking up some very interesting incoming opportunities for people that seem to resonate with this message, right? That they're interested in figuring out how do we actually do this, because I guess most people realize to some degree that we need to do things differently.
Yeah.
But as long as it's in their head, it's a contradiction between business and sustainability. It keeps being like something we ought to do, but we need to figure out how much can we afford to do. So it keeps being this trade-off. And then, all of a sudden here comes this guy that says, well, it's not an either or. On the opposite, it's actually supporting each other.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I get, that people sort of, that seems interesting. Let's hear let's learn a little bit more about what is it actually he says. How can we do this? So I think that's what makes it pick up.
And we're going to explore that a little bit further, but just to be a little controversial, what if we just don't care about the climate? What would happen? What if business leaders turn around and say, so what? We really do not give a toss. Excuse my French, but
exactly.
It's a real question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But let me tell you what climate change really is in this context, because climate change is a massive emerging disruption that just escalates with every extreme weather event we have and every example that we experience as people that the world is out of balance, right? So, I mean, just look around for this summer we just have, or we're sort of in the later part of, right? I bet that no matter where you are, you have felt on your body, and you have definitely read or heard, if you have come across any kind of news, of places where things were wildly out of control compared to what would be sort of the old-fashioned normal, the 20 years ago normal, right? So whether it's the massive droughts and fires in southern Europe or Canada or US, or the massive droughts in China, or there's so many places, or just in your own neighborhood where it might be less massive and less dangerous, but just here in Denmark where I sit, we had one of the most rainy Februaries, and then hardly any rain in March, April, May, and June, and then the wettest July ever recorded since we started recording rainfall in this country. And right now we're in the middle of apparently so far 2 or 3 days summer storm with temperatures and rainfall and wind that we normally see around November, December, January, right? So of course, it's nothing that sort of rocks the boat, and everybody's safe. It's not a problem or anything, but it's just, again, example of these extremes. And this is just a taster, right? So if you say, what happens if we don't do anything? Well, then, it's just going to be extremely much more what we're seeing, right? We are currently around, according to the IPCC, the UN's Intergovernmental panel on climate change. They say currently we're around 1.1 degrees above the pre-industrial level. That's kind of what we measure against, right?
Yeah.
And we're heading for something like 2.5, 3 degrees, right? So and it's not a linear, right? It's more like an exponential change. So basically, it's food supply, it's water supply that are at risk. It's massive conflicts over the access to clean water, to drinking water, to food, to livable land, right? Almost half of the world's population lives in areas that are under high risk compared to climate change, right? So it's not just a few people here and there. It's literally billions of people that will be changed by this. So that's why I say that it's a disruptor, a massive disruptor, and that has a risk side to it and an opportunity side. So depending on which one you're, and normally I'm on the opportunity side, so I'm not that good at the doom and gloom part of it. I know it, but I prefer not to spend so much time on it because it kind of drags people down. Rather than the opportunity side that lifts people up and opens up creativity and imagination. And that's seriously what we need because we need to rethink quite a lot over the coming years.
And I think as well from what you're saying, it's not going to be a quick fix by any stretch of the imagination. I feel that leaders and anyone that's in the field of sustainability have to realize it's a long game, and changes can be very small and incremental, but at least it's in that right direction. So I hear these ambitious statements about net zero, and I just think it's sometimes there's that quick, we've got to do this now, we've got to do this fast, but it's actually a very long-term solution, isn't it?
I mean, it's definitely a marathon we're in for here. But the thing is that if you do it right, there are lots of wins along the way, right? So I think it's really important to say that when if you are one of those, literally millions of business leaders sitting out there somewhere in the world and thinking, I feel like I need to have to do something, but I don't know how to, and I'm really not confident. Actually, I'm more confident that it's not a driver of business. It's a cost, and how much can I afford, and all of those sort of consideration. If that's you, it's perfectly normal. You're like absolutely most, and for no wonder. I mean, you've never had this as part of your curriculum or your portfolio, right? That's been somebody else's game to take on. So, but all of a sudden now this is a business critical issue. But how do I do this, right? I don't really know, And I think for them, it's a key message to know if you do it right, there are lots of business gains and opportunities that can come out of this.
Yeah.
But it's definitely also hard work, and it's definitely, as you say, it's for the long run. So it's not a project that you say, okay, let's make 2024 our climate year, and then we are done, right? Tick that,
Done,
been
tick the
there.
box and move
Yeah,
on. No,
exactly. That's not how it works. It's more like from now and on, but there will be a lot of opportunities to make wins also in the shorter run, right? So yeah, it's a
yeah,
lots of opportunities, but also, I mean, and again, just to sort of expand on that risk side a bit, because I feel a lot of people have this, okay, so perhaps the market will not accept this in the long run, but right now my customers is not demanding something from me, right?
mm,
So the risk side of climate change and not being part of that, really being part of the solution, for many is kind of like put away because, well, I don't see any immediate threat from my market, right? I don't have the demands, but
mm,
just bear in mind that there are more than the brand side here, right? And the brand side in itself can be really, really dangerous. But if you feel like, well, it's not right now. Of course, what you don't know is when it ticks, and it can shift quite fast in people's mind about, okay, enough is enough. Now we need to do something, and it takes time to be good at this. So
yeah,
that's another reason why I want to start. But the other side of risk that I feel like is not really, I guess, paid enough attention to, and especially when we're talking supply chains, well, that's the more sort of physical, the damage to our production facilities,
mm,
either our own or in the supply chain. So these increasing number of storms or droughts or rainfalls, or all of that damages manufacturing facilities, right? So you might find yourself that all of a sudden, well, we can't get any of this component because the factory somewhere in Asia or whatever, could be anywhere on the globe,
yeah,
is 10 foot underwater, right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
all shut down. They hope to be back and operational in 8 months' time. How do we do that? So the whole supply chain and that risk of weather extremes putting our regular product line, assembly line, in that broadest context, really the whole supply chain, all of a sudden putting that out of business or parts of it, that's something I think most people underappreciate or don't think enough about. But just look at last year's energy crisis, right, where this
yeah,
price skyrocket. If you look at it, the actual price is nothing, nowhere near resembles the lack of gas from Putin and Russia. But the thing is that we had an unusual low amount of water, meaning that all of a sudden there wasn't water enough in the rivers that the French nuclear power plants used to cool. So lots of those were shut down. So
yeah,
they had to import more. In Germany, they sail up their coal and wood chips to their power plants on the rivers, but there wasn't enough water in the rivers for them to be used for transporting all these hundreds of thousands of tons of materials. So they couldn't come, so they had to shut down. There were less wind than normally, so the North Sea and all the windmills didn't provide as much energy as it did, and the lower rainfall means that Norway and Sweden's water hydropower systems didn't deliver as much. So all of a sudden there was a lack of electricity, like a second order consequence, right?
yeah,
So there's so many ways where this impact us directly right now. So it's not just a matter of, does my customer ask and want more right now, or do they not? No, it's a lot broader picture. So
yeah.
you gotta start moving on this.
There's some really great examples, and I know I had a colleague in South Africa, and we were actually on a call at a specific time because after a certain hour, everything, the power grid got shut down, and they're just by candlelight. So some countries did actually.
Yeah,
I don't know if they still have it implemented now, but she was just like, oh no, we're going off grid in a couple of hours.
yeah,
It just sounds so foreign to know that we're actually at this this point, this critical point, and I'm in the UK, and we haven't really had a proper summer yet, so it's not.
But it's the UK. What do you expect?
True. That is true. I think the pool covers come off like twice so far since May. So there's tadpoles actually growing on the cover where it's been rain, and we haven't been able to take the lid off. So now I'm going to protect the wildlife on the top of my pool. I think I'm going to swim in it this year. Okay. Some really great insights there, Jasper, and examples. Moving on to a little bit around carbon now. What do you think will change about the carbon market in the next 20 years?
Well, I mean, I just to clarify, you're thinking about sort of trading of carbon and yeah. Well, that's gonna. My best guess is that it's gonna grow rapidly because in the coming years we're gonna see companies that really needs like a quick fix. You talked about a quick fix, and it's not really a quick fix, but it is on the sheets. If you say that I need to reduce with X amount of X% of CO2 emissions, and then you go out and buy carbon credits for it, you can actually put it in on the balance sheet, so it looks right. If you do it correctly, it actually also works, but there's a lot of not so good. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we will see a lot of companies that are latecomers to the game, and they need to sort of all of a sudden really get their act together. So I think they will go out and pursue it, and then we have all the ones that are really progressive and have really, really high and really ambitious goals, and they will need them as well. So that's on the one side, that the need is going up, and on the other side, if you just look at the insane amount of money that flows into something like carbon capture and storage and carbon capture utilization and all of that. So saying, we got to be able to capture the carbon again and use it. So I think it's really clear that we're going to see a massive take up of that market, with all the opportunities and also, of course, risk side there is to a market that all of a sudden just so. But I think it's going to be a huge thing, and I feel fairly confident that the carbon capture solution will be functional also sort of fairly soon in a few years, without being sort of that technology optimist and thinking that technology will solve everything. But I'm pretty sure we will succeed at this simply because the amount of money and the market opportunity. So they will push through. They will find ways to fix that. But again, the interesting side from a company perspective, if you're looking at your own company, is not, it will just be a cost if you just buy the credits. All you have left then is some sort of marketing opportunity, and it's going to be smaller and smaller because people will be looking at you and saying, well, you're just buying it, right? You have a business as usual. So that's kind of like greenwashing as well. It's for some, in some minds, it's already on the shelf of greenwashing, right? Because you're actually not doing anything. So you just you're just buying a solution, and then it's business as usual. But if you don't change what you're doing, I'm not really that impressed. So even that marketing opportunity will diminish over time if you just buy it. So buying credits is not really the solution. That's sort of what you could do with the remains that you currently cannot fix, but you got to start working with it, and that's where all the opportunity sides. So
So bringing it closer to home for myself and for the audience now, what could I do personally with my lifestyle to reduce emissions? So it's fine talking about companies, corporations, but as an individual, what can we do?
Well, there are lots of things you could do, but I think the most important thing, basically, well, I don't know if it's most. There's perhaps a top 3 or top 5 or something.
Yeah, give me your top 5.
Yeah, okay. So I would say not necessarily, I'm not 100% sure this is going to be the order, but anyway, consider who you vote for, because that's your biggest influence on a systemic level. So we need people in power who get it. And unfortunately, there are very, very, very few politicians right now that actually get it, sort of really get it, and are ready to act on it. But if you have somebody near you that you can vote for that actually gets it and is ready to do something about it, I think that's where you need to consider, and of course it's a trade-off, because they might not back everything else you normally stand for or everything, but you got to sort of evaluate that game a bit more than you would normally do. So I would say that's number one, would be really consider who you vote for. The second one, I think, is on your own consumption. Roughly 45% of all carbon emissions is embedded in products, right? So when you say, I'm just going to buy a new suit, I'm just going to buy, compared to, well, can I repair? Could I buy used? Could I? There's a massive part there, and it's not really. It doesn't have nearly the need of the kind of focus that it should have, and also because of the way we measure carbon emissions and that they're distributed and who has the responsibility for it. So a bit technical, but still it means that most companies and most countries focus mainly on what's called scope 1 and 2. So that's your own direct energy consumption and what you have on your fleet of cars and stuff like that. Whereas scope 3, that's all the rest. That's what you buy, so all your products and all your sub-materials and everything. But it's on somebody else's balance sheet, basically. But it still means that there's so much to do there. So there's definitely something on, and so buy what you need and need what you buy, and then extend it as much as you possibly can, extend the life of a product. Like, if you buy a t-shirt, well, then, use it, for Christ's sake, right? Instead of just on average using it a couple of times and then that's it. Probably not for our age, but for younger people, it has a very, very low average use. Yeah. So I think that would be the second one. And then I guess we come back to those sort of regular ones that you hear all the time. What's on your plate? If you would look into what's a healthy diet, you would recognize that it has significantly less meat, and especially red meat, and less dairy products, far more vegetables. So don't shift for the climate, just shift for your own sake, your own body, your own life, for decreasing the risk of illnesses later in your life. So if you just shift to a healthy diet, that will basically help a lot, because it will take away the most of the biggest climate impact from your plate. And then, of course, transportation, how you transport yourself, how much. So you might consider if it's great to do the weekend stopover in the in some part of the world by plane. That's not a good idea. So you definitely want to look at that, but it's also on the daily basis. Not like, I'm not saying don't travel or don't go on holiday. What I'm saying is consider how much and how often and how, and what you do. So consider your travel on a day-to-day basis. And again, if it's possible for you to have more where you walk or bike, it also will improve your physics and your life in general. So lots of ways, again, where you can get actually a better every day. And then the last one is our energy use, including our housing. So if you have a house and you are responsible for that and can refurbish and all of that, so the energy consumption and heat and electricity and so on, that will be the last one. So
some really great advice there. What I've found on the personal front as well is if you live, say, even where you live impacts on carbon and emissions, because if you're in a village but your main supermarket is 10 miles away, it just becomes impossible to kind of say, well, I can't walk or bike. I guess there's car sharing. There's neighbors car sharing that can bring communities together, depending on who your neighbors are, I guess. But yeah, some really good tips there. And
then I think on that personal level that it's important not to really sort of, there's so much emphasis on that individual level of actions, and and partly also because of lobbying from those who actually has the responsibility, right? So, a really typical one is that we've seen the oil industry really being good at lobbying for all kinds of initiatives that, says it's about you doing something to reduce your carbon footprint and your energy consumption level to avoid the focus on them. So there are the reasons for a lot of reasons for sort of having that pressure on. It's an individual thing, but a lot of what we're looking at is more at a systemic level, and that's why I said number one would be consider who you vote for, because there are some systemic changes we need to see happening. And of course also consider who you buy from. So go with the companies that are actually seriously pursuing to make the changes, right?
Yeah, some really good advice there. Let's now come on to the area of circular economy. And we hear the words circular economy all the time. And I know when I first heard the words, I was thinking, well, what actually is a circular economy? And I would love you to just explain what it truly means.
Yeah, well, I think perhaps I want to start slightly somewhere else, because basically it's the modern version of mankind's success formula on the, I would say, better 99% of the time mankind has been on this planet, right? So if we go back 150, something like that, years, and especially if we go further back, but just as long, it doesn't even have to be more than like 150 years or so, we basically lived as part of a cyclic system. Right? So we took stuff from the earth, created products and solutions out of it, used it for as long as at all possible, repaired, remained, and all of that. And once we were done with it, it went back to the soil, right? Because most of it was made by natural fibers, because we had not invented all the synthetic products and materials that we have today. So it was natural materials. So it went back in the systems, right? It came from the earth and it went back to the earth. And then we have sort of, in our genius, figured out a ton of ways to create materials that, do a lot of really good stuff, but they are all synthetic based, or not, a lot of them are, and now we have this linear approach, which means that we have an incredible inefficient system today. Roughly 8 to 9% of every material that's ever produced is used more than once. Right? So just think about that. It means that more than 90% of all materials are just used once, even though they might have opportunities to be used several times, 10 to many times. So just look at that again from a business perspective. What's the opportunity side in the fact that we throw away 90% of the valuable materials after just using it once, right? So it's kind of like the circular economy is really a updated version of the success formula for mankind that we've been living by just about all the time we've been on this planet. So it's about reconnecting to that and really seeing, it's about managing the stocks and flows of materials and energy in a far smarter way, because we've just been so used to the fact that you just take it, make it, and dispose of it. That's it, right? It was cheaper to buy new than to look at the other, and nobody cared and nobody paid for the actual damage it create when we just throw it out. And we still don't. It's still just that externality, but it's becoming more and more real that externality actually has a bill, and it's starting to be put to our table and to our children's table by no small means. So I think the essence of this is that it's a new way of thinking about your resources and the way you produce and manufacture, and what it means. And as before, when we talked about what could you do as an individual, we talked about don't just buy new stuff, repair, and so on. The business opportunity side for that is, offer those services, right? Make your product repairable, extendable, bring them back, upgrade them, put them back into the market, or whatever it is. So there's so much opportunity in it as well. but you got to think differently, and that's what the circular economy is. It's a different mindset. It's a different toolbox that can solve a range of the business problems that we're already facing, and at the same time help make the world a better place.
Yeah. Oh, I love your definition. We need to get that put in a dictionary somewhere. Circular economy definition from Jasper.
That would be nice.
Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Let's take a little bit of a break and talk about your book, Making Sustainability Profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have a copy there. So tell us about where did the idea come from, and tell us what some juicy bits from your book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you could say that it's been at least 15 years in the making. I haven't thought about writing a book for 15 years. By no means. I guess I kind of decided last summer, wrote it in 3 months over the fall, and then had a couple of months going forth and back with the publisher, and getting all the covers and graphics and all of that done, and all that work that actually goes in. It took actually longer from I handed in the manuscript till it was done than actually writing it. But anyway, so I guess you could say that it's been growing over 15 years, and thereby I guess it felt kind of easy to actually extract it. But it's been a really, really enjoyable experience, and for anybody out there that has a range of expertise that you've been in for a while, it can really clarify your mind to force yourself to sort of say, well, now I got to put it down on paper so that other people can actually understand it, not just have those, well, I know, and when I hear this, or when I sit down with a company and sit there in front of a CEO and they talk, and I just draw the conclusion, but I have to start asking myself, well, why do you do that? Why do you go from here to here to here, right? What happens in what's the gates? What's the questions? What are you looking for, right? So trying to sort of extract that out, and I've purposely really been trying to make this as a do-it-yourself book. So for companies or business leaders that actually wants to change their company and find ways where they can make profitable changes and that are also good for the world, you can do this. It's really meant as a step-by-step guide. I have created what I call the impact blueprint. So it's a 5-step model where the 5 steps are, the first one is the mindset, and we touched a bit about it. We haven't talked specifically, but all of this about seeing the opportunity side and all of that. So there's a chapter on that. And then the second one is mission, having a really good answer to the question, why is the world a better place? Because we exist, right? If you already have that, it's great. If you have a mission statement that doesn't really help you to answer that question, well, then you have some work to do. If you don't have a mission or vision or whatever statement at all, then you of course have some work to do as well. But that's the second one. The third one is to map out the opportunities, and we talked about circular economy briefly before. That's the toolbox I put forward here. So you use that to spot all the interesting opportunities. And then the very important part is that you match it against top 3, top 5 of the biggest problems you are facing right now, and that your ideal customers are facing. And I think that's one of the biggest differentiators compared to what most other sustainability books and methods they do, because they tend to say you got to make, now we're talking a lot about climate, you got to make a carbon footprint, and then you start from the top, right? What's the biggest contributor, then you got to fix that. Where I say, well, let's start by seeing what's the best tool to help you solve one of the really important problems you and or your customers have that also contribute to making the world a better place. And let's start there. So that I want to make sure that to the extent possible, and that's very, very much possible, but of course not everything, but to the extent possible, that every step you take has individual value to you as a customer and or your client, and thereby also you. If your client is happy, they tend to make you happy. So anyway, making sure that it has individual value beyond the fact that it's also greener, right? So we got to make sure that we really tie it in tight to the business reality that you're in, and then sooner or later we will get to. It might not be that we start with with one of the biggest impact, because that might not be interesting or aligned with the problem we have right now, right? So it could be that you need to cut cost, or that you need to strengthen the ties to your customers, or you have a hard time attracting talent, or productivity is low, or some of those things that are quite typical that we see with companies working with circular economy, that they gain there, right? So, and then to say, okay, if that's the number one, let's solve that problem for you, and that's going to free up resources. It's going to put money in your bank, and it's going to also see, this is kind of interesting. It actually works. What else is on that list of ideas we have? Well, and then sooner or later you will get to number one as well, when it's appropriate, because the alternative is that you point at it, and then companies will typically then allocate far too few resources to do anything about it, right? So you might say, well, we're working on the biggest problem, but we are going so slow, right? Because it's not really, we got to start solving the biggest problems we have, and then we'll do this once we sort of in that leftover space we have. Whereas if you start by just solving what's most important, then the resources is already there, right?
So, do you know, there's a hi Latona. Latona's just made a comment there. Lovely to see you. Just says, it sounds great. Let's face it, businesses can't exist without customers, clients, investors. Make their ESG goals align with yours, which is absolutely align with theirs.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely right. And again, it's just, it makes so much more sense when what you're dealing with is something that's already on your mind and already on your customer's mind, and it kind of gives you that tailwind for everything you do, because it's all high priority already, so you don't have to struggle to find a way. So I would basically say, if you're sitting out there listening to this and experiencing that it's kind of like hard work to get this, whatever it is, climate sustainability initiative going, not that it can't be difficult, that's perfectly normal that it's difficult, but if it's hard work, then you're probably not dealing with the right kind of stuff, right? Then you got to refocus on, and you prioritize what area you're actually working with. So anyway, that's the third one. The fourth is really kickstarting the implementation, because we got, and of course, again, once we know that what we're working on is the top problems we have, then it's typically not that hard to get going, because everybody's kind of like anxious. Hey, go. We just see new opportunity to solve one of our biggest problems. Let's go for it, right? And then the last one is magnifying, going out and spreading the message about your work, but especially also on the cause that you're working with, because it gives you a far more interesting way of communicating. It's not just me, and my product. It's kind of like, well, this is the cause, this is the issue, this is what we are doing. You could also say what other people are doing. So, just like you hear, it's a spotlight series, right? You shine the light on the issue and on other people, not on, hey, look what an amazing company we are, right? It's not, it becomes quite boring quite fast. So it's a way more interesting way. So those are the 5 things that's sort of in the model. And then you can basically just pick it up at any major retail shop, bookshop, and then get started. Or you can join one of the programs where you do it with me, if that's more interesting for you. If you more feel like you want to have that support, then I have a 5 months program where I take them through all the steps, and you create all the assets you need. So, but it's definitely right there, created for you to do on your own, if you like.
I was going to say that's absolutely brilliant, because earlier on when we started this discussion, and that question that business leaders have, where do we start, how and what we do. So you produce it. I'm absolutely super impressed by the way that you wrote this book in 3 months. That's just an enviable Just kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you.
Business leaders that say, where do we start? What do we do? This making sustainability profitable actually gives them that starting point and that step-by-step guide to their sustainability journey.
Yes. Yeah, that's been my intention, and that's I've been fortunate to get really positive feedback on it. So it seems like I've at least to some degree managed to succeed in creating something that people feel like it's easy to digest and to understand, and it gives the directions and the tools and the suggested processes to do it with and all of that. So so hopefully if this is you considering it, it will be useful and valuable for you as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I can't wait to it. And there's a lot of sustainability procurement groups as well that I'm part of, where I'd love to just share links to it. So send them to me afterwards. Sure. And then after we finish the show, and then I can make sure that those things are circulated so that we can support the facilities management industry professionals as well. Just a question with SMEs. Do you feel that SMEs need to have, because sometimes they're just starting out, or they don't have the money to invest in a sustainability professional? So are there ways that they can start the journey and be supported without, say, having a headcount or an overhead on their books, because they're at a stage where they can't actually afford it? So what are the alternatives for them?
Well, I mean, for starters, again, this is really a business agenda, right? It's just, for most people, they would say, well, then it's in disguise because I don't recognize it. But hopefully also part of this book at least will be able to help them to see that, right? I often describe it like the business leaders feel like they're standing looking out over really, really foggy terrain and having to set the course, and all they know is that it's really a tough terrain, that it's topographically and there are cliffs and there's everything. It's really a challenging terrain, but we have to set the course and move forward, and they don't know how to do that. But so part of the book has been written with that purpose of sort of lifting that fog a bit so that they can see, right? So it is really a business agenda, perhaps slightly in disguise for some. So you don't need that sustainability background to get started. You might need it somewhere. Well, you will need, of course, the knowledge and technical skills somewhere along the way. But the important part is to start seeing that strategic opportunity in it. Because once you do that, it's also far easier to judge whether or not to invest in it. Because you would have done this several times in your business life, depending on how old your company is as an SME, where you have said, well, okay, I have to go out and invest in something, a product development, a purchase of equipment, a merger, whatever, something it is, or in external support somehow, but for something that was important for you because you could see the strategic importance of this. So you found a way to finance such an investment. But of course, if you look at sustainability, it's kind of like, I can't see anything. I can't see any opportunity. It's just something I have to do, partly moral, partly regulation, partly whatever. Right then, it's really hard to go out and find that in a scarce budget, to find that room for investment. So start by seeing the opportunity in this. And then, of course, it's far easier to invest in it because you believe in it at a different level. And it's not a something that we also need to do. It's kind of like, if this is the way to solve my client's biggest problem, of course I'm going to invest in it. So if I need to find those 50,000 quid, I'll go find them somewhere, right? That's what we do. That's what business leaders do, right? So
I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, I've got a couple more questions for you.
All right. Yeah,
sure. Okay, so what can leaders do to help prevent or reduce climate change?
Yeah, well, of course, it depends a lot on what kind of business you're in. So some are really material intensive or energy intensive, others very less so. But I would say that the rule of thumb here is that the highest impact and the biggest opportunities, because they go together, they are related to changing the way you do. So whatever it is you do, doesn't really matter. Let's just say that it's consultants like you and I, or it could be any type of a real sort of pure knowledge company that doesn't produce anything, and just use energy for having a conversation like this.
Yeah.
It's about then changing your customers, the message you have, integrate that sustainability into it. And if you're in a manufacturing company, again, it comes down to changing, what does your product do? So if you have makes shoes, right, for instance, or tables or whatever, right, office chairs, then it's not about just getting green power for your manufacturing facility. It's really about how do we think and rethink our products so that they could, again, as we talked about before, perhaps live longer or be repaired, be produced by better or fewer materials, be designed for recycling, all of that comes into it, right? So the biggest impact is always in changing the core of what you do to sort of make that something that contributes to making the world a better place. So no matter, as I said, if it's a physical thing or an energy thing, or if it's a pure knowledge business or a pure service business, it will still be about saying, well, perhaps you're an accountant, if you could kickstart the conversations of the CEO to get them started, well, that's going to significantly outweigh whatever you can do in changing light bulbs and getting an EV for the transportation you and your employees have around town and all of that. So it's always going to the core. That's the main principle. Of course, you don't, especially if you're new to it, you don't start by just rocking the boat massively by putting the very core, the most important product on the line. But you got to have that as your focus. It's really about changing the way you do and what you do, so that it becomes a force for good.
Oh, thank you. That's some really good advice there. When you were talking, it actually reminded me many years ago when I used to look after buildings, and we'd always have to put in the energy initiatives, and then you've got your low, medium, high, and we'd have to like pick off and prioritize. Okay, when can we do which are the low hanging fruit? And I think we probably still do that to some degree. You're right. It's about starting somewhere, but at least making that impact and starting. How does business with impact work with business leaders to improve sustainability? So let's just talk now about how you engage and work with business leaders.
I have a few different sort of main products, but these I have the one-to-many. As I mentioned before, there's a whole program aligned with this one here. So I have what I call a positive business accelerator. It's a five months program where business leaders join a cohort of other business leaders, and then through bi-weekly sessions. It's basically sort of like a triangle. If you picture a triangle where you have consultancy in one corner, you have accountability in the other corner, and in the third one you will have capability or education. It's kind of like a sweet spot between these three things. So it will make sure that we build the competencies you need, but you also get the advice on helping yourself actually create the assets that you need. So for each of these 5 steps in the model, there's an asset you will walk away with, right? So you will have the new mission statement. You will have a roadmap for where to move in the coming years. You will have an implementation plan. You will have a pitch to going out and start communicating on all of this, and you will have tools to support you in doing this and all that. So if that's interesting, then that's one way I work with them. So, and also create it specifically for SME leaders, and to be able to reach as many as possible and to make the investment as low as possible. That's also why it's in cohorts. So it's a really reasonable investment for people to make, if you feel like that could be a next step. So that's one way. And the other one is more on a one-to-one basis. So I run mentoring programs with companies, often in combinations with workshops with groups of people, and sometimes also some of the elements from the program and from the book here, going in and using some of those tools as standalone, if that's needed, to either extract what kind of history do we actually have, how do we reshape our narrative, or we need to create the new mission or vision for us, or we need to make a roadmap because we have the other things in place, but we don't really know where to go, or we need help to implementation, or we need to upgrade our sales team's ability to actually communicate and talk about this, or this, that, or the other. But very often it's sort of combined, where you have the backbone will be a mentoring program, could be a 6 or 12 months package, and then perhaps you sort of add in something to support whoever is around that key person that gets the mentoring.
And with the cohorts, does it work all year round, or do you have certain times when there's
they will be starting sort of at different periods of time. So I'll be starting one up here in the fall, so around October. That's going to be the next opportunity to join one of these. So if this sounds interesting, you can reach out, or you can just go to my website. Actually, you can read a bit about it, and you can get into I have a free workshop where you sort of get an introduction to it. That's how you get in. If you want to sort of sneak peek and see if this could be you, then just have a look at the website. It's called BW Impact. So business with impact, bwimpact.com/introduction. And right there you can just read a bit more about the program and the session, and then you just sign up. It's for free. So that could be a sort of a way to list in and hear more about it, and ask the questions you might sit with and say, is this right for me? That's how you can figure out.
And how often do you run the introductory sessions? Do you run them regularly?
Yes, absolutely. They are typically I run them bi-weekly, two different workshops on the same day. So like a morning, afternoon, or noon thing or something. So quite regularly.
Yeah.
Sometimes even weekly, depending.
Yeah. And what about locations? So is it a global service? Can anyone
Yeah, it
join?
can. I mean, my main focus is on Europe, but that's also, I mean, it's an online thing, so you can join from anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's time wise, it's scheduled as morning programs for Europe.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're somewhere else in the world and is ready to get up or stay up or whatever it is, depending on where you are on the time scale, it's not restricted in any way. It doesn't have restrictions in the sense that what I come with, you could use that anywhere. So, but time-wise, it will be placed on an AM Europe time.
Yeah. That's really good to know. That was the last question that I had for you, but I'm really just in terms of business with impact, and really important to share with the audience, what you do, what's the best way that our audience and any business leaders listening, if they're listening live or to the recording, how can they reach you?
Well, I think perhaps the easiest thing is just to hit me up on LinkedIn, because there's, as far as I know, only one called Jasper Steinhausen. So that's probably the easiest way. So hook me up on LinkedIn. In there, you can also, if you just want to, look a bit more before you make contact. I publish a lot of stuff in there, videos and articles. I have a newsletter and stuff you can get onto there. So there's lots of content there that will give you a bit more of an idea about how am I thinking, what am I doing, what's the kind of advice I offer, is this meaningful for me? So you could do that, or you could simply also just directly contact me on email. It's js@bwimpact.com. So you're always, of course, welcome to just hit me up there. I think that's probably the best way or easiest way.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say as well, with your book, if anyone wants to get a copy of your book, how can we do that?
Well, they are on all the major bookshops, but of course you can get on Amazon, you can Barnes and Noble, and so just basically go to where you normally buy your books, and that's where you can get it. It's you can get it as for Kindle, or you can get it as a regular physical book, landing in your old-fashioned mailbox. That that thing you have outside. it's it's actually possible to get stuff in it still.
Still, yeah. Do you know? I was going to say that there's nothing like the touch and feel of a new book. So even though I have a Kindle, I have Audible, I still love the idea of just touching and feeling and reading a book, which is absolutely
I would
great.
say, especially, I mean, if you plan to actually use it as a guide, I think it's quite a lot easier when you have it, because again, as I said, there are lots of also methods in it. Like, this is what you do. You gather this kind of people in a group this long, and you set aside so much time. This is the process you could use. You can also use something else if you like, but here's one you can use. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, right? So if you got to do that while you're on a Kindle, and it's for that, or listening to it, it will be a lot worse, right? So if you're planning to sort of do it really use it as a guide, then I would definitely
hard
spend
copy.
those few bucks on getting it. So
yeah, that's amazing. And just to if anyone's missed the show live, it is streaming also on my YouTube. It is on LinkedIn and also on Jasper's Facebook. So if you haven't had an opportunity to listen live, then we do have the recordings that you can access as well. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you again, Jasper. It feels like it's been too long.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we should do something again soon. That would be absolutely great. So, but Maxime, thank you so much. I mean, it's really me that's grateful for being on the show. It's been really interesting, and I love your questions. So hopefully somebody out there has also found that they got a few nuggets with them that they could use for something. That would be really, really great. So thank you so much for having me and for inviting me.
You are more than welcome. And I think after this, we definitely need to do another lunchtime learning session for business leaders on sustainability. So let's schedule one of those in for everyone to benefit from your amazing knowledge. And thank you so much for making sustainability profitable, and the book that will the hardest thing to do is to start and know where to start, and for you to produce that content and share your knowledge in such an open way is just an absolute blessing. So I want to just end on that note, just to say thank you so much. We've been joined by Jasper Steinhausen, Business with Impact, in the Spotlight series. Jasper, until next time, take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.